Now you are watching Mind Gig.
Humans have been battling viruses since before our species had even evolved into its modern form. For some viral diseases, vaccines and antiviral drugs have allowed us to keep infections from spreading widely, and have helped sick people recover. For one disease, smallpox, we've been able to eradicate it, ridding the world of new cases. But we're a long way from winning the fight against viruses. In recent decades, several viruses have jumped from animals to humans and triggered sizable outbreaks, claiming thousands of lives. The viral strain that drove the 2014 to 2016 Ebola outbreak in West Africa kills up to 90% of the people it infects, making it the most lethal member of the Ebola family. But there are other viruses out there that are equally deadly, and some that are even deadlier. Some viruses, including the novel coronavirus currently driving outbreaks around the globe, have lower fatality rates, but still pose a serious threat to public health as we don't yet have the means to combat them. Then keep watching for more information.
Severe acute respiratory syndrome coronavirus SARS-CoV or SARS-CoV-1 is a strain of virus that causes severe acute respiratory syndrome SARS. It is an enveloped, positive sense, single-stranded RNA virus which infects the epithelial cells within the lungs. The virus enters the host cell by binding to the ACE2 receptor. It infects humans, bats, and palm civets. On April 16, 2003, following the outbreak of SARS in Asia and secondary cases elsewhere in the World Health Organization, WHO, issued a press release stating that the coronavirus identified by a number of laboratories was the official cause of SARS. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC, in the United States and National Microbiology Laboratory, NML, in Canada identified the SARS-CoV genome in April 2003. Scientists at Erasmus University in Rotterdam, the Netherlands demonstrated that the SARS coronavirus fulfilled Koch's postulates, thereby confirming it as the causative agent. In the experiments, macaques infected with the virus developed the same symptoms as human SARS victims. A 2019-2020 coronavirus pandemic of coronavirus disease 2019, COVID-19, showed many similarities to the SARS outbreak, with the viral agent identified as severe acute respiratory syndrome coronavirus 2, SARS-CoV-2, yet another strain of the severe acute respiratory syndrome-related coronavirus, SARS-CoV. SARS-CoV-1 is one of 7 known coronaviruses to infect humans, including human coronavirus 229E, CoV229E, human coronavirus NL63, CoV-NL63, human coronavirus OC43, CoV-OC43, human coronavirus HKU1, CoV-HKU1, Middle East respiratory syndrome-related coronavirus, MERS-CoV, and SARS-CoV-2. Rotavirus is a genus of double-stranded RNA viruses in the family Reoviridae. Rotaviruses are the most common cause of diarrheal disease among infants and young children. Nearly every child in the world is infected with a rotavirus at least once by the age of 5. Immunity develops with each infection, so subsequent infections are less severe. Adults are rarely affected. There are 10 species of the genus, referred to as A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I and J. Rotavirus A, the most common species, causes more than 90% of rotavirus infections in humans. The virus is transmitted by the fecal-oral route. It infects and damages the cells that line the small intestine and causes gastroenteritis, which is often called stomach flu despite having no relation to influenza. Although rotavirus was discovered in 1973 by Ruth Bishop and her colleagues by electron micrograph images and accounts for approximately 1/3 of hospitalizations for severe diarrhea in infants and children, its importance has historically been underestimated within the public health community, particularly in developing countries. In addition to its impact on human health, rotavirus also infects other animals, and is a pathogen of livestock. Dengue fever is a mosquito-borne tropical disease caused by the dengue virus. Symptoms typically begin 3 to 14 days after infection. These may include a high fever, headache, vomiting, muscle and joint pains, and a characteristic skin rash. Recovery generally takes 2 to 7 days. In a small proportion of cases, the disease develops into severe dengue, also known as dengue hemorrhagic fever, resulting in bleeding, low levels of blood platelets and blood plasma leakage, or into dengue shock syndrome, where dangerously low blood pressure occurs. Dengue is spread by several species of female mosquitoes of the Aedes type, principally Aegypti. The virus has 5 types. Infection with one type usually gives lifelong immunity to that type, but only short-term immunity to the others. Subsequent infection with a different type increases the risk of severe complications. A number of tests are available to confirm the diagnosis, including detecting antibodies to the virus or its RNA. In 2016, a partially effective vaccine for dengue fever became commercially available in the Philippines and Indonesia. It has been approved for use by Mexico, Brazil, El Salvador, Costa Rica, Singapore, Paraguay, much of Europe, and the United States. The vaccine is only recommended in individuals who have had a prior dengue infection or in populations where most 80% of people have been infected by age 9. In those who have not had a prior infection, there is evidence it may worsen subsequent infections. Influenza, commonly known as the flu, is an infectious disease caused by an influenza virus. Symptoms can be mild to severe. The most common symptoms include high fever, runny nose, sore throat, muscle and joint pain, headache, coughing, and feeling tired. These symptoms typically begin 2 days after exposure to the virus and most last less than a week. The cough, however, may last for more than 2 weeks. In children, there may be diarrhea and vomiting, but these are not common in adults. Diarrhea and vomiting occur more commonly in gastroenteritis, which is an unrelated disease and sometimes inaccurately referred to as stomach flu or the 24-hour flu. Complications of influenza may include viral pneumonia, secondary bacterial pneumonia, sinus infections, and worsening of previous health problems such as asthma or heart failure. During a typical flu season, up to 500,000 people worldwide will die from the illness, according to WHO. But occasionally, when a new flu strain emerges, a pandemic results with a faster spread of disease and, often, higher mortality rates. The most deadly flu pandemic, sometimes called the Spanish flu, began in 1918 and sickened up to 40% of the world's population, killing an estimated 50 million people. I think that it is possible that something like the 1918 flu outbreak could occur again. If a new influenza strain found its way in the human population, and could be transmitted easily between humans, and caused severe illness, we would have a big problem. Orthohantavirus is a genus of single-stranded, enveloped, negative-sense RNA viruses in the family Hantaviridae of the order Bunyavirales. Members of this genus may be called orthohantaviruses or simply hantaviruses. They normally cause infection in rodents, but do not cause disease in them. Humans may become infected with hantaviruses through contact with rodent urine, saliva, or feces. Some strains cause potentially fatal diseases in humans, such as hantavirus hemorrhagic fever with renal syndrome, or hantavirus pulmonary syndrome, also known as hantavirus cardiopulmonary syndrome, while others have not been associated with known human disease. HPS is a rare respiratory illness associated with the inhalation of aerosolized rodent excreta, urine and feces, contaminated by hantavirus particles. Human infections of hantaviruses have almost entirely been linked to human contact with rodent excrement. However, in 2005 and 2019, human-to-human transmission of the Andes virus was reported in South America. In 1980, the World Health Assembly declared the world free of smallpox. But before that, humans battled smallpox for thousands of years, and the disease killed about 1 in 3 of those it infected. It left survivors with deep, permanent scars and, often, blindness. Mortality rates were far higher in populations outside of Europe, where people had little contact with the virus before visitors brought it to their regions. For example, historians estimate 90% of the native population of the Americas died from smallpox introduced by European explorers. In the 20th century alone, smallpox killed 300 million people. It was something that had a huge burden on the planet, not just death but also blindness, and that's what spurred the campaign to eradicate from the earth. The human immunodeficiency viruses, HIV, are two species of lentivirus, a subgroup of retrovirus that infect humans. Over time they cause acquired immunodeficiency syndrome, AIDS, a condition in which progressive failure of the immune system allows life-threatening opportunistic infections and cancers to thrive. Without treatment, average survival time after infection with HIV is estimated to be 9 to 11 years, depending on the HIV subtype. In most cases, HIV is a sexually transmitted infection and occurs by contact with or transfer of blood, pre-ejaculate, semen, and vaginal fluids. Research has shown for both same-sex and opposite-sex couples that HIV is untransmittable through condomless sexual intercourse if the HIV-positive partner has a consistently undetectable viral load. Non-sexual transmission can occur from an infected mother to her infant during pregnancy, during childbirth by exposure to her blood or vaginal fluid, and through breast milk. Within these bodily fluids, HIV is present as both free virus particles and virus within infected immune cells. An estimated 32 million people have died from HIV since the disease was first recognized in the early 1980s. The infectious disease that takes the biggest toll on mankind right now is HIV. Powerful antiviral drugs have made it possible for people to live for years with HIV. But the disease continues to devastate many low and middle income countries, where 95% of new HIV infections occur. Nearly 1 in every 25 adults within the WHO African region is HIV positive, accounting for more than 2/3 of the people living with HIV worldwide. Rabies is a viral disease that causes inflammation of the brain in humans and other mammals. Early symptoms can include fever and tingling at the site of exposure. These symptoms are followed by one or more of the following symptoms: violent movements, uncontrolled excitement, fear of water, an inability to move parts of the body, confusion, and loss of consciousness. Once symptoms appear, the result is nearly always death. The time period between contracting the disease and the start of symptoms is usually 1 to 3 months, but can vary from less than 1 week to more than 1 year. The time depends on the distance the virus must travel along peripheral nerves to reach the central nervous system. Although rabies vaccines for pets, which were introduced in the 1920s, have helped make the disease exceedingly rare in the developed world, this condition remains a serious problem in India and parts of Africa. It destroys the brain. It's a really, really bad disease, Muhlberger said. We have a vaccine against rabies, and we have antibodies that work against rabies, so if someone gets bitten by a rabid animal we can treat this person. However, she said, if you don't get treatment, there's a 100% possibility you will die. Ebola virus disease, EVD, or simply Ebola, is a viral hemorrhagic fever of humans and other primates caused by Ebola viruses. Signs and symptoms typically start between 2 days and 3 weeks after contracting the virus with a fever, sore throat, muscular pain, and headaches. Vomiting, diarrhea and rash usually follow, along with decreased function of the liver and kidneys. At this time, some people begin to bleed both internally and externally. The disease has a high risk of death, killing 25% to 90% of those infected, with an average of about 50%. This is often due to low blood pressure from fluid loss, and typically follows 6 to 16 days after symptoms appear. The virus spreads through direct contact with body fluids, such as blood from infected humans or other animals. Marburg virus is a hemorrhagic fever virus of the Filoviridae family of viruses and a member of the species Marburg virus, genus Marburg virus. Marburg virus causes Marburg virus disease in humans and non-human primates, a form of viral hemorrhagic fever. The virus is considered to be extremely dangerous. The World Health Organization rates it as a risk group 4 pathogen, requiring biosafety level 4 equivalent containment. In the United States, the NIH/National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases ranks it as a Category A priority pathogen, and the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention lists it as a Category A bioterrorism agent. It is also listed as a biological agent for export control by the Australia Group. The virus can be transmitted by exposure to one species of fruit bats, or it can be transmitted between people via body fluids through unprotected sex and broken skin. The disease can cause bleeding, hemorrhage, fever, and other symptoms similar to Ebola. However, Marburg virus is not the same as Ebola, although similar. Actual treatment of the virus after infection is not possible, but early, professional treatment of symptoms like dehydration considerably increases survival chances. In 2009, expanded clinical trials of an Ebola and Marburg vaccine began in Kampala, Uganda.